ultimately we just need to stop thinking about ourselves. And ultimately, if even if we find ourselves to be those who did grab a ton of toilet paper or all the medication or things like that, we still have the opportunity today to say, okay, this is how I reacted. I thought about myself more so than anything else, and now I have the chance to think about other people.
Right.
And doing that in letting Christ propel you forward, essentially, like letting the truth of what we were called to be the thing that stands above our fear, that stands above any other desire and propensity to preserve ourselves as long as we can. I have to do the theme song first.
My bad. Oh, was that it?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. It's very nice. So this is the first episode of Foothill Studio Conversations remote. I think it's like episode 17 of the actual studio conversations. But circumstances have changed, and we're kind of in this mandatory, non-mandatory lockdown situation. So we're, for the most part, working from home, at least Mark and I, and we go in when we have essential tasks to do. And we thought maybe it would be good to do this, to kind of do a shorter studio conversation just about where we find ourselves, how we got here, how we're processing things that have encouraged us, things that we've seen that are good, what the church is doing, all that kind of stuff. So, Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
Hopefully this works out relatively well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was telling someone, it's like, I've seen people with way more money to do a setup fail at this really hard, and we just kind of slapdash this together in like an hour and a half, and so
that doesn't look good for us.
God willing, this will be great. Anyway, so we're obviously in this kind of California lockdown situation, and it just seemed like it snowballed. By the way, my kids might run in at any moment, so I'm not going to edit it out.
I get it.
Yeah. I'm not going to edit it out because this is life in quarantine. I think you can even hear them in the background. So you and I have kind of been talking about this COVID-19 stuff for, I don't know, a few months, since January, late December or something. I brought it up just because I started hearing news, and I happened to watch the movie Contagion like a week.
Yeah.
Like,
you idiot.
Well, it was a week before the news started coming out about it in China, so I didn't know I was an idiot at the time. But it definitely did not help when the news started coming out. So
if there's ever anyone in your life that isn't taking it seriously enough, then you have them watch that. Like, that's what you do.
Right. Though, to be fair, there's nuance. and that disease was much more deadly. But that being said, so when we first started talking about it, and I kind of brought it up to you, what were your initial thoughts as you were hearing me, and maybe you heard some random stuff from news?
Yeah. Initial thoughts was this wasn't a virus to be concerned about. Like, actually, my first thought was hearing the symptoms, and it was similar to the flu, but more deadly.
Sure.
I was like, this will probably be interesting to see, like, how it spreads, because my thought was that typically the common cold spreads the same way, where it just, like, jumps from people to people and sort of washes over the world one time through. Generally, like how the flu does as well. Most people get the flu.
Right.
At this point, unless they get their shots. But it was never like cause for alarm, and it was never thinking, and you were more vigilant and on top of it on this subject, but it was never like people are going to freak out and things are going to close down. It was like the expectation was not there that it would go that far, even though the reality is always there that it could go that far. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, like, I was vigilant on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I expected what is currently happening. Like, I was vigilant in the sense that I was like, wow, this is pretty serious, and maybe we should be getting, some extra food and, stuff like that. But I didn't necessarily think like, oh, there's going to be this like crazy lockdown and potential martial law. It's like, yeah, I saw that happening in China, but China's China, and so it made a little more sense there. And though our lockdown is nothing like China's,
it's super lax still.
I can still go out on jogs, and not that I do that very often, but I can. Yeah. And so it's definitely different, but yeah, I mean, I processed it and I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy and pretty unusual. But I definitely didn't see it getting where it has gotten.
Right.
And to be honest, like, I mean, we're not going to get overtly political, but there's no way to like talk about this without like politics kind of coming in, because a lot of that is dictating our lives right now. And it's very interesting, just kind of from an ideological perspective, the things that you when something so out of the norm, so out of control comes in, like it really kind of causes you to put aside partisanship, put aside, and I've noticed that in people. I would say that's one of the silver linings that is kind of out there. It's like, it seems like to a degree politicians are trying to moderate a little bit and like, hey, let's actually try to serve the American people and not let our politics and ideologies get in the way, and people in general. It's not like, look at what this conservative did, look what this liberal did. It's just like, hey, we're people and we need respect and, kindness and love and like all that kind of stuff. So I've seen some of that. I've also seen the opposite of that at times. But okay, so now we're in this lockdown of sorts or whatever. Where's like your kind of mind and heart been in this?
I remember the first day that I started feeling the reality of like, oh, this is super serious. And it's not even necessarily like, because I don't have too many health complications. I don't have anything like that, fortunately. But just realizing like my parents do. And there's people in my life who would be threatened by this. And so I just remember it was actually, I left the office with you. We talked about it, and I went to the post office, and I'm like, if there is a place for germs to exist, it is going to be in this place, this in and out, like petri dish of a place.
Right. Sure.
And so I just remember the initial, like the panic, and I'm sure that we all felt, and the same sort of opportunity to either let it sit in or fight it and be like, okay, it's going to be fine. Let's think realistically and rationally.
Right.
Because I think most people felt as we see from the lack of toilet paper and baby wipes, most people felt the panic. And if not, actually all people felt that panic. Let's just be honest.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that was the initial sort of response, was panic. Like, this is dangerous for the people that I love. This could be dangerous for me because we don't have too much information on what it is, how it works. Like, we just don't have accurate numbers yet or anything like that.
Right.
But, I mean, over time and over talking and doing enough good research, and I'm still trying to stay as informed as possible on what's happening, because the less that's a mystery, the less there is to panic about, aside from the things that just aren't in our control.
Right. If you can say, what are some of those resources that you found useful in this time?
Yeah. Well, you threw me a Joe Rogan one, which was fine.
It was good, and it was...
Except for he spent the whole episode going, wait, so this isn't true? Oh no! Like, he kept using those words, and I was like, this is not a helpful thing.
Yeah, it was with a guy named Michael Osterland or something like that, and he was very good and calming, but Joe Rogan was like, oh man, yeah.
Spent the whole time doing the oh man. And granted, it helped debunk myths, which being more informed about what actually works really helps.
Sure.
Instead of jumping on the first information that you get. Like there was the whole Stanford release of like, okay, if you have sneezing or mucus or anything, it's not this. It's supposed to only be a dry cough, and if you hold your breath for 10 seconds and things like that. All of that Stanford did not put out, and they said, hey, don't trust this. We didn't do anything. Which makes me wonder, what kind of people are we living with in this world? But the Dave Rubin has a good one. It's about like 10 minutes long, too.
Yeah.
So super concise, very much just a matter of fact, like here's what's happening, here's what we're doing. Here's how it actually interacts and who this is threatening, but this is why we're on lockdown and taking these measures. I don't remember if it's him that goes into like the timeline of how it all works as well. And so right now we're seeing a climb in the current cases numbers.
Right, because testing is ramping up. Yeah,
exactly. And we may never catch up to the actual numbers, but it's nothing to be alarmed about. This is stuff that's already been here. Like all these cases have already happened before.
Right, we're just finding out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one's really great. And then CDC, like just listen to them. They're gonna give you the necessary information, and they release stuff on YouTube.
Right.
Every time they get an update, they do it almost immediately. So yeah, those were my resources that I like to stick to.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think the only one I would add to that is there's this, for more of a kind of medical look at all this, there's a channel called Medcram, Medcram. He has like 40 videos out. I basically, it's akin to Ferris Bueller's Teacher. Like, it's just like, here's the facts, and it's just like a black screen with drawing on it, but it's really good, just kind of medical, non-alarmist information. It's almost boring in its in how medical it is, but it's just good information.
And if you are feeling panic, Dr. Mike. Dr. Mike is always good to just keep you calm.
Yeah.
Calm and informed.
Yeah, and we'll link some of those down below. Now, I will say that probably on the Joe Rogan podcast there's language and stuff, so I just want to put that out there. We're not saying that all the language on these are good, but a lot of the information we like. So I'll throw that out there. Right. Yeah, I mean, we were together gonna run a half marathon down in San Diego. And that I'd kind of been joking like a week or two before, like, yeah, I wonder if this thing's gonna get canceled. And you already ran your half marathon, so you callously did not care. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know, is that actually going to happen? So we still planned on going down to San Diego and doing all this kind of stuff. And ultimately, the Friday before, it was going to be on Sunday, the Friday before, I got an email that said it was canceled. And I was like, man, that's
when the first 250 gathering and stuff started happening.
Right, yeah. That was like after Trump's initial kind of, we're putting it out there, this is something we need to crack down on. And then Gavin Newsom did the 250 thing. And so, like, after I saw that, I was like, if it's getting canceled, we're hearing about it tomorrow. And then we heard about it, and we decided to still go for better or for worse. And, hey, we ran our own half marathon.
You were driving down as well, so yeah. It was more responsible.
Yeah. I drove down with our family, and we did our own half marathon because the half marathon was canceled. But on the way back, like while we were there, it's like all we could talk about, which was annoying in many senses. but it was just like at that point, it was like new things happening all the time. And then by the time we were driving home, like San Francisco was pretty much in shelter in place. And I was like, wow, And then a few days later, we were in shelter in place. And so I've definitely kind of been in this, like, yeah, I was vigilant, but not necessarily knowing what that meant. And I've definitely had times of just like total anxiety, like what the heck's happening? Like when I approach people or people approach me or whatever, there's this like anxiety, and it's not necessarily for me, but the reality is, I mean, what we hear is it's not fatal for people in their 20s, 30s, whatever.
Right.
But from what I understand, and this could be wrong, it's mainly because people our age respond better to ventilators and stuff like that. So it can't, if you get the hard version of it, because a lot of people just have no symptoms and they're just fine and they go on their way. But if you get it hard, you can still be hospitalized and all that. And I have a heart problem, so it's like, so it does make me nervous and anxious at times, and so I have to remind myself of that. What is it, Philippians 4, the peace that transcends all understanding. So it's like, don't be an idiot. Don't put yourself in situations that can potentially harm you, but also trust. Like, have trust, have faith. This is definitely a situation that really kind of theology hits the road, I guess. Like, where is your faith? Where is your trust? That doesn't mean be an idiot. That just means trust God. And so it's been a little of that. Jeremiah 29:11's come to my mind, not because of the hope thing, though. I mean, kind of because of the hope thing, I guess.
Yeah, sideline that hope thing.
Yeah, just get rid of that. Just the idea is Jeremiah 29:11 is about hope while being captive. Like, they were captive to the Babylonians at that time or whatever. And God's like, hey, I have a plan. Like, trust me, you can have hope. That doesn't mean you're not in captivity right now. You're in captivity right now, and that's not fun. And so for me, it's the ability to acknowledge that this situation is frightening to a degree, frustrating to a degree. You know, I mean, we're so kind of individualistic, I guess, and freedom-minded as Americans in general that this can seem so like, this is so dumb and such an overreaction, and it's so inconvenient, and it's forced me to just be okay with acknowledging that, yeah, this is a little scary, and also just the idea of loving others better, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because even if this isn't something that is going to affect me, like physically, it as you said, there are people in my life that it could potentially affect. You know, my dad works in the Capitol. Now he's working from home at this point, but you know, he's kind of on front lines as far as trying to get stuff passed and all that. So just thinking about him and the people he interacts with, and thinking about all the losses that there could be in our community and all that. It's like, I get being annoyed and I get being frustrated and I get it feeling like it's overblown, but my faith and my desire to love and serve others is, I feel the need currently to push that up and kind of pull down my frustration or individualism or whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, to that individualism, there's a lot of people who feel like this is dumb. The shelter in place is dumb, and it's a reaction to don't hold me down. I can take care of myself. Don't tell me what to do type stuff. Some of it is.
Sure.
Some of it's a real response to people freaking out unnecessarily.
Sure.
But it's justifying I don't need to do this then. And it's already been, I heard a great TED Talk on this once. There's an age range, both up to mid-20s and then post-40s, that when they hear negative things and like negative warnings, they typically don't listen to them. They don't heed them, and it's a sense of either I'm developing my own identity or I've done all this stuff and now I'm just like trying to finish out the rest of my life the way I want to.
Hmm.
Whereas everyone who falls like in between that typically heeds warnings. Most of the time, it's the inverse for those two groups, where it's positive messages such as "let's help people" and do things like that that will spur them on more to
Right.
do good and help people out. Whichever one we fall into, ultimately, we just need to stop thinking about ourselves. And ultimately, even if we find ourselves to be those who did grab a ton of toilet paper or all the medication or things like that, we still have the opportunity today to say, okay, this is how I reacted. I thought about myself more so than anything else, and now I have the chance to think about other people.
Right.
And doing that in letting Christ propel you forward, essentially, like letting the truth of what we were called to be the thing that stands above our fear, that stands above any other desire and propensity to preserve ourselves as long as we can. Like, I don't know.
Right.
I think the self-interest thing has been revealed in a lot of us, and how much
Totally.
we actually have and how much we're willing to do for it.
Totally.
And if anything, as the church, we should be the first ones to lay it down and carry our cross and take care of those around us.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think of, well, I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure this is true for some other people, even at Foothills. Like, we have 4 chickens.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot of chickens, right? But we're
Yeah.
we're actually in the season where they're laying eggs, so we get 3
Mm-hmm.
to 4 eggs a day or something like that.
What are their names?
Oh gosh, you're gonna put me on the spot. Maybe, maybe Anne, Lindsay, and Lucille. Though I think one of them,
The ladies.
yeah, one of them I've started calling Houdini because she escapes out of the chicken run all the time. She just jumps out. Anyway, but one thing Bethany's done recently is we have almost an excess of eggs at this point. So we've been giving them away to people, like giving them away to friends and stuff. So it's like, if you have some resources like that, now definitely take care of your family, but if you have some extra resources, be generous, be kind, be Christ, like give those to people. And even if you want to do it anonymously so they don't know who did it, and and they don't come for your eggs or whatever,
Yeah.
I think it is a good time to be outward focused. I'm trying to set up a social distancing block party. Where we can like hang out with our neighbors, like keep some space or whatever, but just acknowledge that, like, hey, we're in this together, and let's love on people. I've been
Well,
trying. Yeah.
that's another element of what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be a community, and so it's
What's
and
that,
that's
Mark?
and even I find it fascinating that it's like everyone is getting behind these very biblical principles at this point. Like,
Oh,
we're starting to
totally.
change the terminology from social distancing to physical distancing because we recognize that we need each other in the worst times.
Right.
And so, like, another way to just be able to gather around, but gather around under the banner of the Bible, of Christ, of what we believe in, and celebrate and love and give hope to people instead of conjuring up fear and anxiety amongst people. It's wild, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's super interesting. I mean, politically, culturally, faith, all this kind of stuff. When the unknown creeps in, I definitely think a little more of like kind of our base nature comes out in the selfishness, but it also, like, we get rid of all the ideological hurdles that we put in front of ourselves in
Yeah.
interacting with other people. Like, I hear these news stories that, like, I would say 3 to 4 weeks ago would have just been like, oh, that's an annoying thing that someone said, and I don't want to get into it. I'll just do the headline. It was something like, so and so thinks more conservatives will die than liberals, or something like that, because conservatives don't listen to warnings from the government, or so, it was something. It was something like that. Which several weeks ago I would have been like, "That's just another person saying another thing," or whatever. But
Right.
in this time, it frustrated me more on a level of like, people are people. People are made in the image of God. People have inherent value and worth, and to just like brush people off because of some stupid partisan thing, it is just so counterintuitive to what we need, and it should not be the message coming out of the church. This wasn't out of the church, but
Right.
in general, like, we need to be a unifying force in this crazy, crazy time, because I just keep hearing the word unprecedented all the time. You know, this is just one of those things where it's like, wow, this is really crazy. And again, you know, I have a little backyard, and so my girls are able to run around. We're still able to go on walks. We're still able to do this, that, and the other thing. So to a degree, it kind of feels like normal life until I have to go out and engage with others at a store. And I'm like, how do I keep that physical distance in a checkout line? Like, I'm like, you're at least 2 feet away, 3 feet away from the teller. Like, what are you going to do? Everyone touches the keypad. What are you going to do? You know, it's like, I feel like fine and normal, and then I have to go out and I'm like, Gah! And then I come back and I'm like, I'm fine and normal, but did I catch it? Who knows? I guess we'll find out in like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
You know,
the issue of it being an invisible sort of movement.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we really do need to be wise and smart and trust and not lose community. I don't know about you. I've been calling my parents a lot more. You know, I mean,
if anything, this has been better for those relationships.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, I've been checking in on my grandma more, texting my brother, seeing how he's doing. He's lead pastor of a church out here. I live in Rancho Cordova, if you didn't know that. So it's caused me to go outward more and really reach out to some of those relationships that are important and make sure they're taken care of and all that kind of stuff. And we need to figure out a way as a church community to safely, in this time, reach out, because people are looking for something. They're looking for, you know.
And I would even say, in a sense, we're looking for normality, but I don't even know if that's always what we need in this time.
Sure.
Because, as you said, like, what was the term again? Unprecedented.
Yes.
This is an extraordinary time in a event sense, and so I think this is an opportunity to look for, forgive me for how cheesy this is, but look for extraordinary things to do and to love extraordinarily well.
So cheesy.
I know. but nonetheless, yes, we're trying to hold on to what is normal because we want to feel comfortable.
Right.
But at the same time, when we learn to embrace that this is not normal, and that's okay. This is a huge opportunity for us to be something more and to be something different and to work outside of ourselves for once.
Totally.
Like, once we start embracing that and let go of what was normal, I think that's, and with that, I think is the crux of trust. To be able to walk out where you have never been before. Once we start doing that, I think our faith really will start engaging, and I think our trust will start to become very, very real as we take those steps, and we'll see some really big things happening amongst the church, amongst our communities, and I think God is already moving and doing some crazy things through this too. So,
two more directions. One is, I mean, it's a reality, and I think, like you said, we need to acknowledge realities, and there is a huge economic reality that a lot of people are all of a sudden facing unemployment. I'm guessing it's already happened to people in our church. I don't happen to know, but I'm assuming it already has. So there's a lot of people that are freaked out because 2 weeks ago they had a job and now they don't. And maybe they're only making 46 or 60% or whatever unemployment is right now.
Yeah.
And
here's the interesting thing on that, though.
Yeah.
We're facing realities that we've always faced.
Sure. But we
all could lose. It's a big deal, I understand, but I'm just saying there's...
Yeah, no,
when you realize that this was always a thing, the element of control looks a little bit different at that point.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the reality is in this situation, I forget exactly what the stats were, but it was like a normal day at the unemployment office was like 2,000 to 2,500 calls to seek for employment or unemployment, and it's up to like, I want to say like 50,000 a day or something like that. Like it's
unprecedented.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And so I guess I don't have any solutions for that. I mean, all that kind of stuff is like economics way above my brain space. But I do want to say, like, if that is you, as you know, it's starting to hit our church as well and all of that. If that is you, reach out to people, because I mean, one of the leading causes of divorce and suicide and all this kind of stuff is financial worry. And so if you all of a sudden find yourself in a space that you are not ready for, reach out to people. You know, maybe they can't help you out monetarily, but they can be a support system, physically, emotionally, whatever you need. I would really encourage you to just reach out to people, because this is just a reality a lot of people are going to start facing.
Right.
You know, we just had to lower our like monthly income budget by like $1,000. We'll see how much we got to lower it in another few weeks. Another, you know, like we don't know. And so that can cause uncertainty. It might also cause us to realize how much excess garbage we have that we don't need, how many streaming services we don't need, you know, like...
Or how many streaming services we do need because we have nothing else to do.
Fair enough. Counter to the point, Mark.
My bad.
But I do just want to say, like, if you are kind of in that space... shoot us an email, shoot the pastors an email through the website. Like, reach out. Don't deal with it on your own. We are part of a community.
There is no shame.
Absolutely no shame. So I did just want to plug that. And finally, let's just kind of talk about the pivot that our church is taking right now. As far as just kind of Sunday services and how some of the different ministries are dealing with some of this. What kind of stuff are you familiar with as far as what the church is doing right now?
So far, of course, anyone who's been paying attention on social media knows that we've done worship services, we've done sermon, we have Sunday school online now. And we're trying to keep that up as best as we can under the conditions. And for the next few weeks, that'll probably still keep going. I know there's an encouragement to meet in whatever capacity you can with your small groups and things like that. If you're with your family, sit down and read together, learn together, do something. Howdy.
Don't worry, you're not on the video. Keep going.
I know that that's been pushed out there, but to always continue to be smart in that. And other than that, that's all I'm aware of so far. We're still figuring out Easter stuff. We're trying to be as engaged as possible. We're trying to help out. Senior Nutrition is still doing a drive-through sort of thing for people, which is super awesome.
Yeah, super great.
Coffee, it's food, and they're going to keep that going as long as they possibly can. And then making house calls. I know we're just trying to stay connected with all of you guys as well, which is very important. Again, that community connection, and we're not alone in this. And so, that's all I know of so far, unless you got something else.
I mean, I know a lot of ministries, like the adult ministries, young adult ministries are, and maybe even the youth ministries are doing Zoom, which is
Mm.
like some kind of video conferencing app. I have it downloaded, but I haven't created my account yet. Sorry, Matt. Uh, gonna do my first Zoom meeting tonight. We'll see how it goes.
Nice.
But I know as a way to be able to meet, even when we can't in person, we're trying to connect with that. So I would encourage people to do that with their families. If you have some like older parents and they have a smartphone but they don't know how to like install apps, like my grandma would have issue with that, but she has a smartphone, so I could kind of walk her through that. I would encourage you to, I mean, if you feel comfortable visiting them, to do that as a way for them to receive maybe FaceTime calls and Zoom calls from pastors and friends and all that kind of stuff. Because there is something to that face to face connection.
Yeah.
That's why we're not just doing this as a video or as a audio call. We wanted to kind of have this face to face interaction. You got a beautiful face, Mark. We just
Thank
we
you.
just love it. Yeah, so we are really trying to pivot a lot. Foothillcp.org/updates is where you can get kind of the most up to date info as far as what's going on, and the youtube.com/foothillcp will kind of have all the sermons. We're going to be posting more devotionals. Mark already said the Sunday
Right.
school stuff. So definitely bookmark both of those pages and be checking in on them pretty regularly, kind of for the most updated stuff on Easter and all of that
Right.
madness. But it is important to just know, as Jeremiah 29:11, bringing them back to the Bible, bringing it back to
Do it.
to my coffee mug verse. There is hope. I mean,
Tons.
we don't have to have full trust of government, full trust of media, full trust of people, all this kind of stuff, whatever. But we can have full trust of God, who was not surprised by all of this kind of stuff, and we can treat people as God's creation, made in God's image. We can love people and we can serve people the same way that we always have, just maybe in a different medium or whatever.
And what I was gonna say earlier
Okay.
on the recognizing how little control we already have and what
Yes.
this
Right.
whole thing has done. It's also recognizing how much has been in someone else's control and God's control and what he's been doing and how he's been working. Is the we recognize the reality of that he has always been doing stuff and moving, and so he's going to continue to do so. Like, we've made it this far, y'all. We've made it this far,
Right.
and he's been good, and he's going to continue to do that.
Yeah, you actually just reminded me, and I'm gonna get the wrong scripture reference. I think it might be like Job 38 through 42 or 40 through 42 or whatever. Basically, it's at the end of Job, and Job is frustrated, to say the least. Like, that's probably the understatement of the century. But he is just out of sorts, and he is upset, and he is angry, and he comes to God with accusations, right? And he's basically like, how could you allow this? How could you yada yada yada? And he goes through kind of this litany, and then it says God responds. And if you read through the response, it seems kind of like weird. He's like, do you know when the sun sets and rises? Do you know where the water comes from? He lists off like all this stuff that seems like, why does that even matter? And ultimately, it's backing up what you were saying. God is saying, you trust me in all of this. The sun will rise. The water is there. You don't understand so much stuff that goes on planet Earth, in the universe. I set it all in motion. I'm looking over it. You've trusted me your whole life, and yet this hits you, which is bad, but this hits you and you just lose that trust. And so it frustrates me in the sense that, like, you empathize with Job, right? you're like, yeah, this sucks. Like, everyone he loved pretty much died. Everything was taken away from him. His health was taken away. Like, you empathize with Job. He's like the most empathetic, like, or the easiest person to empathize with in all of like literature or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's frustrating to a degree that God seems to come back with such like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And not like come back with that. Right. You know, as a words of affirmation guy, I'm like, where's my affirmation of my feelings, Lord? You know, like so it's like I totally get it, but there is that check on ourselves and that check on our control of, do we really just love and trust God? Because it's pretty easy for us most of the time. Like, what happens when that gets challenged? Like, what does that do to our trust? And I think scripturally speaking, we want that to be a sharpening of our trust, a refinement. I think it's in First Peter. You know, it's the idea of like our faith is like going through this refinement process, which if you were the metal being refined in a furnace, you'd probably be screaming. It wouldn't be comfortable.
Yep.
You know, so so I think some of our faith is in that refinement process right now, and it's not very fun. And we need each other, like as much as we always have. But now all our safety net seems to be pulled away, and so we're realizing it. And so I think we need to embrace community more and be more outward focused, if that makes sense. So
Absolutely.
anything you want to say to close up?
Nope, I actually got to go now.
Okay. All right. You're like, shut up, Bryce.
Yeah, Bryce, great to trust. I'll do. Yeah, great job.
Yeah, it's got good. Okay, guys. Well, this was our first Foothill Studio Convo remote. Hopefully, it worked out and the audio is not too terrible. We'll try to get better as this goes on, and God willing, we'll be back in the studio before you know it. But we love you guys. Let us know if there's anything you can pray for us about. Pray for you about. Did I say that?
Let us know if you can. Yeah.
We'd love to pray for you. Hit us up at Foothill CP on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Email us, Bryce or Mark at foothillcp.org. Email the pastors, foothillcp.org/updates for all updates. Subscribe. We love you. Talk to you later. Bye.
Peace.